Hello, I'm Scott Borders, and welcome once again to another edition of History in Your Own Backyard. Today we find ourselves in beautiful Camp Springs, Kentucky at the St. Joseph Catholic Church, and joining me today is Linus Ensweiler. Linus, thanks for having us out here at this beautiful church.
Well, thank you for having us. I appreciate you doing this.
Now, this is a church that has a very storied history, as I understand it, starting all the way back in the 1840s. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, it started in 1843 when my great-great-grandfather and 5 other families from Germany and Austria came up the river and from New Orleans and settled in 4 Mile. Now, in 1870, it changed to Camp Springs, as when we got a post office, there was another 4 Mile, Kentucky. So we will refer to 4 Mile for the first few years. Okay, in 1843, we had a priest from Holy Trinity in Cincinnati come over and say Mass in the homes of my great-great-grandfather, Michael Ensweiler, and Peter Steffen. This went on for a couple of years, and the priests finally said, you know, you need a church of your own. Well, the farmers put stone down for the foundation, cut trees for logs, and built a log church 35 by 50 feet. And then they had the church then. Now they needed a priest. So they collected $10, bought a horse, stationed it at Corpus Christi in Newport, and he came out and said Mass in the church until 1851. That's when we got a pastor in the name of Reverend John Vall. And that's when we became a parish and the mother church of Southern Campbell County.
Now, how long has the church that we're standing in right now been in existence here in this beautiful sanctuary?
This church was built it started in 1865. The pastor at that time knew that we needed a bigger church, so he purchased 10 acres from where the cemetery is now, and the log church was built. And they went to the creeks and got clay and sand, made and fired the brick down by 4 Mile Creek. And it was finished then in 1865. And the log church was dedicated to St. Joseph at that time, so we just kept St. Joseph with this new church. Now this church started out, it was 40 by 70, the original. Right here's where it ended, where the sanctuary. And then 1886 is when they added the 18-foot, which is the sanctuary and the sacristies.
Somewhere in between that, I believe it was around 1870, though, lightning struck the church.
1870, lightning struck the church. It damaged the steeple, the roof, it cracked the plaster, and it broke all the windows. Now, to show what kind of community we lived in, everybody donated, even the churches, and they repaired the church without going into debt.
Now, Linus, one of the things I noticed in walking around this church, and I must confess I notice it in many churches, are the stained glass windows. These, no exception in their beauty. Absolutely gorgeous to look at. Tell me a little bit about the history of these stained glass windows.
Okay, you can see the names in the windows. Those are the families that donated the money to put the windows in. Because up until I think it was 1912 when the windows went in, it was just plain white glass.
So you have tell me a little bit about some of the other aesthetics that you see as you walk around this beautiful building.
We can start with the side altars that were situated on each end there. And we had statues of St. Aloysius and St. Therese, which were patron saints of the young people. Okay, those were removed, and now we have the Sacred Heart and Blessed Virgin in back of church, where they used to be up here in front.
Now, Linus, something else we see, and almost immediately when you walk in the door and you look straight ahead, there are these incredible oil paintings. Tell us a little bit about those, I believe, in the early 1900s.
Yes, it was 1917. Leon Lippert, who studied under Frank Duveneck, painted the 4 murals in the sanctuary and installed them at that time.
And this was even before the sanctuary had electricity.
Yes, right. It was all we had at that time. We had oil lamps down the aisles of the pews. And in 1929, we did get electricity.
Now, tell me a little bit in wartime about the grotto that was added here.
Second World War, we lost 2 parishioners in the war. So our pastor at that time promised that he would build a grotto if our boys were protected, which they were. And in 1945, the grotto outside the church was dedicated.
So tell me a little bit about in 1963 when the vestibule was added.
Okay, before 1963, when the brick vestibule was added, we just had a small wood porch-like is all it was. So in 63, we added the vestibule, which includes now where the pastor puts his vestments on. We have a reconciliation room, and it's a greeting place for our parishioners to come in and meet each other.
Now, Linus, as we're kind of going through our timeline here, some of the big renovations hit around 1970. Tell us a little bit about those.
In 1970, we did a major renovation of the church. At the time, we had old wood floors. The beams were rotting out. So as what we did, we tore the floor up, put a new concrete floor in. We got all new pews. We got a new furnace, and we painted and repaired the whole inside of the church.
Okay, taking us up then into 2000, brand new era, finally something, a modern convenience hits in 2000. What was that?
In 2000, before 2000, it would get pretty warm in this church in the summertime. So in 2000, we finally did get air conditioning, which was a major improvement.
It was 2003, you ended up working on the roof, is that correct?
Yes, we had to also put on a new roof, and we got new box gutters. We had the steeple was fixed up and repaired, and new crosses put on the roof.
Now, some damage over the years also led to some of the murals being damaged, and some of the restoration for that was done in the latter part around 2013, starting then.
Yes, the murals, they were put in 1917, and over the years, nothing was ever done to them, just what they were there. So we had a parishioner willed us some money to have the murals redone. So we got an art expert in, I think he was from Columbus, Ohio, that came down and fixed the murals, repaired them, and so that they would last, he said, another 100 years.
Well, Linus Enzweiler, it has certainly been a pleasure, you telling us about some of this beautiful church. We really do appreciate it.
Well, thank you for doing it.
And thank you for watching yet another edition of History in Your Own Backyard. For Linus Enzweiler, I'm Scott Borders saying so long from beautiful Camp Springs, Kentucky in the St. Joseph Catholic Church. And remember, travel slowly, stop often.